What if an ordinary-looking Washington quarter in your pocket is secretly worth thousands, or even over $100,000? In this video, you'll discover incredible mint eras, hidden varieties, fascinating history, and real collector stories that turned everyday coins into life-changing finds. From doubled dies to dramatic die breaks and other rare surprises, every detail matters. Watch until the end, because the next valuable quarter could already be sitting in your pocket. A quiet Saturday morning at a regional coin auction began like countless others, with small cardboard holders, whispered conversations, and trays filled with ordinary pocket change that most people would have ignored. Then one seemingly common 1965 Washington quarter drew every eye in the room. It had spent years unnoticed before experts realized it had been struck on a leftover 90% silver planchet during the historic metal transition of 1965. When the bidding stopped, the humble quarter had realized more than $7,000, proving that history can sometimes hide inside the smallest pieces of everyday change. Stories like this remind collectors that extraordinary discoveries often begin with coins almost everyone else overlooks. Today we are stepping into the remarkable world of the United States 1965 Washington quarter, a coin that appears completely ordinary at first glance, yet carries one of the most fascinating chapters in modern American coinage, where changing metals, production pressure, and unexpected mint mistakes combine to create mysteries that continue captivating collectors decades later. The year 1965 marked a dramatic turning point for the United States Mint. Silver had become increasingly expensive, millions of coins were disappearing from circulation, and the nation faced a serious coin shortage that demanded immediate action. To keep commerce moving, the Mint introduced a new copper-nickel-clad composition for quarters while temporarily removing mint marks to discourage collectors from hoarding specific locations. Designed by John Flanagan decades earlier to honor George Washington, the familiar portrait remained unchanged, allowing Americans to accept the new coin without hesitation, even though its metallic heart had been completely transformed. That decision created a fascinating blend of old appearance and new technology, making the first 1965 quarters silent witnesses to one of the greatest production changes in United States numismatic history. Behind those ordinary-looking coins, the production floors were under enormous pressure. Although many people associate difficult minting stories with the 1950s, the challenges from that decade carried directly into the mid-1960s, when agging equipment, enormous production targets, and years of rising demand pushed mint employees to their limits. Dies wore out faster than expected, presses operated continuously, and millions upon millions of quarters had to be produced in record time. Every adjustment, every replaced die, and every rushed inspection increased the possibility that something unusual might escape into circulation. Those rare survivors became accidental time capsules, preserving tiny manufacturing stories that no one intended to create, yet collectors now spend years searching for. That is where fascination truly begins. Most 1965 Washington quarters look nearly identical, but specialists know the smallest details can separate an everyday coin from an extraordinary discovery. A slightly expanded rim, an off-center strike, unexpected doubling in the lettering, rotated die alignment, or evidence that the coin was struck on the wrong metal can transform a seemingly ordinary quarter into a headline-worthy collectible. Even subtle differences in the color of the edge can raise excitement because the standard-clad coin reveals a visible copper core, while a transitional silver era displays an entirely different appearance. These tiny characteristics often escape casual observation, allowing remarkable coins to travel through countless hands before someone finally notices what everyone else missed. The emotional side of collecting is what keeps these stories alive. Imagine receiving change at a grocery store, tossing a quarter into a drawer, and forgetting about it for 20 years, only to learn later that another coin with nearly identical features sold for thousands because one careful collector recognized a rare mint era. Families have unknowingly spent coins that could have changed vacations, paid tuition, or funded lifelong dreams simply because nobody examined them closely enough. At the same time, other collectors have experienced unforgettable moments after discovering an overlooked treasure hidden inside inherited jars, forgotten bank rolls, or decades-old collections. Every 1965 quarter carries the possibility, however small, that it has a story still waiting to be uncovered. As auction records and private sales have demonstrated, the value ladder for exceptional examples can climb dramatically. Certified transitional errors, dramatic strike abnormalities, and remarkable preservation have produced documented results beginning around $5,000 for notable pieces, while spectacular wrong-planchet errors and elite condition rarities have achieved much stronger prices. Particularly important transitional silver examples have realized well over $7,000 in major auctions, and the most extraordinary combinations of rarity, condition, and authentication are often discussed by specialists as coins capable of reaching the $80,000 range in exceptional private transactions or elite collector markets, when every desirable characteristic aligns perfectly. Those numbers are not attached to ordinary circulation pieces, but to genuinely scarce, professionally verified rarities. If you decide to inspect a 1965 Washington quarter, patience is far more valuable than excitement. Start by checking the weight with a precise digital scale, then study the metal color along the edge to determine whether the expected copper layer is visible. Look carefully for strike alignment, unusual rim expansion, crisp letter doubling, or other characteristics that appear different from normal examples. Never clean the coin, never polish its surfaces, and never assume that an internet photograph proves authenticity. The smartest collectors rely on respected professional grading and authentication services because genuine mint errors often resemble ordinary damage to inexperienced eyes. A careful examination supported by expert evaluation protects both the coin and its potential value. What makes the United States 1965 Washington quarter unforgettable is not simply its design or its place in history, but the idea that one of the most familiar coins ever produced can still surprise even experienced collectors decades later. It reminds us that extraordinary stories often hide beneath ordinary appearances, waiting for someone curious enough to look a little closer instead of spending the coin without a second thought. But this remarkable quarter is only the beginning of today's journey, because the next coin we'll explore carries an even more astonishing mystery, one that has left seasoned collectors speechless and turned an everyday pocket find into an unforgettable legend. The United States 1970 Washington quarter is one of those coins that almost everyone has handled without giving it a second thought. It blends effortlessly into pocket change, cash registers, and forgotten coin jars, quietly carrying the same familiar portrait of George Washington that Americans had trusted for generations. Yet beneath that ordinary appearance lies a fascinating story shaped by changing technology, evolving collector interest, and unexpected minting surprises that continue to fuel excitement decades later. Every scratch, every crisp detail, and every subtle variation tells a story that most people never notice. While millions were spent without hesitation, a handful became prized collectibles, proving that history often hides in the coins people overlook the most. The early 1970s represented an important period for the United States Mint, as demand for circulating coinage continued to rise across the country. Automated vending machines, expanding commerce, and growing populations required enormous quantities of quarters to be produced quickly and efficiently. By 1970, the Mint had gained several years of experience producing copper-nickel-clad coinage after the historic transition away from silver, but producing billions of identical coins remained an enormous challenge. Dies wore down under constant pressure, presses operated around the clock, and inspectors worked tirelessly to maintain quality. Even with these improvements, tiny manufacturing irregularities occasionally slipped through unnoticed, creating unexpected treasures that would not be recognized until years later by careful collectors. At first glance, a genuine 1970 Washington quarter appears nearly identical to countless others, yet experienced numismatists know exactly where to look. The sharpness of Washington's hair, the strength of the eagle's feathers on the reverse, the spacing of the lettering, and the appearance of the rim all reveal clues about how well the coin was struck. Some examples display unusually bold details that escaped heavy circulation, while others exhibit fascinating mint-made characteristics such as doubled lettering, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, rotated dies, or dramatic die cracks that transformed ordinary production pieces into highly desirable collectibles. These differences are often so subtle that they remain unnoticed for decades before someone finally realizes they are holding something truly uncommon. Stories surrounding the 1970 Washington Quarter are filled with moments of unbelievable luck and heartbreaking missed opportunities. Collectors frequently describe searching through thousands of bankrupt rolls with nothing remarkable to show for their effort, only to discover a valuable variety hidden in the final handful of coins. Others recall inheriting old jars of change that had been sitting untouched for decades before uncovering a remarkable era coin hiding among ordinary circulation pieces. There are also countless stories of rare quarters unknowingly spent on everyday purchases because no one recognized the unusual characteristics hiding in plain sight. Those moments continue to inspire collectors to examine every coin just a little more carefully before letting it disappear into circulation forever. As enthusiasm for modern-era coins has grown, remarkable 1970 Washington quarters have earned impressive attention in auctions and private collections. Well-preserved examples featuring dramatic mint eras or exceptional eye appeal have crossed the $5,000 mark in documented sales, surprising many people who assumed modern quarters could never command serious premiums. Wrong planchet strikes, spectacular doubled dies, and extraordinary off-center examples have continued attracting intense competition whenever they appear on the market. Coins combining outstanding preservation with major mint eras become especially desirable because they represent both historical significance and remarkable survival against overwhelming odds. The highest levels of the market belong to coins possessing extraordinary combinations of rarity, condition, and authenticated mint mistakes. Certain elite specimens discussed among advanced collectors have approached or exceeded $120,000 through major auctions or significant private transactions when every desirable characteristic aligned perfectly. Those remarkable prices do not apply to ordinary circulation quarters, but to exceptionally rare examples that have been thoroughly authenticated and carefully preserved. Every record-setting sale reinforces the idea that even a coin produced by the hundreds of millions can become almost priceless when an extraordinary mistake occurs during its creation. If you happen to find a 1970 Washington quarter, resist the temptation to assume its value or to sell it immediately. Begin by examining the metal tone under natural light, making sure the surfaces appear original rather than cleaned or altered. Study the strike clarity, paying close attention to Washington's portrait, the eagle, and every letter around the rim. Inspect the rim for unusual expansion, clipped areas, or irregular shaping, then carefully evaluate die alignment to determine whether the design appears properly centered. If anything seems unusual, avoid polishing or cleaning the coin because even gentle cleaning can permanently reduce its desirability. The safest path is always professional authentication and grading, allowing experts to determine whether the coin represents an ordinary issue or a genuine rarity. What makes the United States 1970 Washington quarter so captivating is not simply the possibility of financial reward, but the reminder that remarkable discoveries still wait inside the most ordinary places. A forgotten coin tucked away in a drawer, a handful of change received after buying coffee, or an old family collection could contain a piece of history that has quietly escaped notice for more than half a century. That possibility keeps collectors searching, learning, and hoping that the next coin they examine will reveal an extraordinary secret. And with that remarkable chapter complete, it's time to move forward to our third coin, where an even more surprising story and an even greater mystery are waiting to be uncovered. On a packed auction floor, a coin that looked like nothing more than an ordinary Washington quarter suddenly transformed into the center of an intense bidding war. Collectors who had spent years studying mint-made errors recognized something almost invisible to the untrained eye, a dramatic die break that created an astonishing visual effect, unlike nearly any other quarter of its era. The hammer finally fell after spirited competition, reminding everyone in the room that the smallest manufacturing accident could completely rewrite a coin's destiny. That unforgettable sale became another powerful lesson in modern numismatics. Extraordinary treasures are often hiding inside the most ordinary pocket change, waiting for one observant collector to notice what millions of others missed. The 1974 Washington quarter arrived during a period when the United States Mint was producing enormous quantities of circulating coinage to satisfy the country's growing demand. By then, clad coinage had become the new normal, and the familiar portrait of George Washington continued to represent stability as billions of quarters rolled off high-speed presses. Every die was expected to strike thousands upon thousands of planchets before replacement, but constant pressure inevitably caused wear. Tiny fractures began forming inside hardened steel dies, and while most were removed before serious damage occurred, a few continued striking coins long enough to leave behind remarkable mint-made fingerprints that would fascinate collectors for decades. Those accidental creations turned routine production into lasting history. Among the most intriguing stories connected with the 1974 issue is the unusual die break that collectors sometimes describe as creating a three-legged appearance on the eagle. Instead of a complete, sharply defined leg, the damaged die failed to transfer every detail, giving the illusion that part of the design had disappeared. Unlike ordinary circulation damage, this effect originated during the striking process itself, making every authenticated example a genuine product of the mint rather than post-mint wear. Because the visual change is subtle, countless examples likely circulated unnoticed for years before specialists recognized that the missing detail represented an authentic die failure rather than accidental damage. That mystery continues to attract experienced collectors eager to study every feather, claw, and raised line. The excitement surrounding these unusual quarters comes from the fact that no two die breaks evolve exactly the same way. As a cracked die continues producing coins, the break may gradually grow larger, creating different stages of the same era. Early strikes might show only a faint weakness, while later examples can display bold raised metal, missing design elements, or dramatic cuts extending toward the rim. That progression allows collectors to trace the life of a damaged die almost like reading chapters in a book. Each surviving coin becomes evidence of a particular moment inside the mint, preserving an event that workers never intended collectors to witness. Stories from the collecting world are filled with unforgettable moments involving coins like these. One family discovered an old coffee can filled with change that had been untouched for decades, assuming it contained nothing more than spending money, until a careful examination revealed an unusual die-break quarter hiding among hundreds of ordinary coins. Another collector spent years searching through bank rolls with no success before spotting a strange-looking eagle moments before returning the final roll to the bank. Countless others unknowingly spent similar coins years earlier, never realizing they had briefly held something that would later become the highlight of another collector's collection. Those missed opportunities continue inspiring enthusiasts to examine every quarter before it disappears back into circulation. When authenticated examples displaying dramatic die breaks or major mint errors appear on the market, prices can climb surprisingly fast. Strong error coins with outstanding eye appeal have crossed the $5,000 level through specialized collector sales, while increasingly dramatic and well-preserved examples command substantially stronger premiums. Coins combining spectacular die breaks, exceptional strike quality, and certified mint state preservation attract especially aggressive bidding because opportunities to acquire them remain extremely limited. Although ordinary 1974 quarters remain common, extraordinary mint-made errors exist in an entirely different category where rarity and collector demand determine remarkable values. At the highest end of the hobby, extraordinary coins possessing unique die failures, exceptional preservation, and unquestioned authenticity have been discussed in elite private collections at figures approaching $120,000, when rarity, historical importance, and eye appeal align perfectly. Those headline numbers represent exceptional outliers rather than ordinary examples, but they demonstrate how dramatically value can change when a truly unique mint era survives in outstanding condition. Before assuming any coin belongs in that category, collectors should carefully examine the die breaks, compare the metal color for signs of wrong planchet errors, inspect strike quality, confirm the rim remains original, and study every letter for unusual clarity or distortion. Most importantly, resist the urge to sell immediately. Professional authentication by a respected grading service remains the safest and smartest way to determine whether an unusual quarter is a genuine mint rarity or simply a damaged circulation piece. The 1974 Washington quarter proves that history does not always announce itself with brilliant colors or obvious rarity. Sometimes it hides inside a tiny break in a steel die, quietly changing the appearance of a single design element and creating a mystery that survives for generations. Every unusual quarter reminds us that remarkable discoveries often begin with nothing more than curiosity, patience, and a willingness to look closer than everyone else. But our journey through hidden treasures is far from over, because the fourth coin on today's list carries an even more astonishing story, one that could completely change the way you look at ordinary change forever. In one unforgettable auction, what appeared to be an ordinary modern Washington quarter stunned seasoned collectors when an authenticated major double die error ignited a fierce bidding battle. The coin had reportedly spent years tucked away in a small collection before its unusual lettering and dramatic design doubling caught the attention of an experienced numismatist. As the bids climbed, the room fell silent, proving once again that a coin most people would spend without hesitation could become the centerpiece of a serious collection. That remarkable sale reinforced a lesson every collector eventually learns. History does not always shine from ancient gold or silver. Sometimes it hides inside a modern quarter that millions of people have carried in their pockets without ever taking a closer look. And the United States Washington quarter, dated 1981, is one of the most fascinating examples of how an ordinary-looking coin can conceal an extraordinary story. The year 1981 arrived during a period of relentless production inside the United States Mint. Although the dramatic transition from silver coinage was already well behind, the Mint still faced tremendous pressure to produce enormous numbers of circulating quarters while maintaining consistent quality. Every working die had to withstand repeated high-pressure strikes, and each die began its life after being created through a complex hubbing process that transferred the design into hardened steel. During that process, even a slight misalignment between impressions could leave behind subtle doubling that would later appear on every coin struck from the affected die. These microscopic manufacturing events happened far from public view, yet decades later they continue to fascinate collectors because they transformed ordinary production into accidental works of numismatic history. At first glance, a genuine 1981 Washington quarter seems almost identical to countless others resting in drawers, piggy banks, and cash registers across the country. Yet experienced collectors know that the smallest details often reveal the biggest secrets. On a true double die example, certain letters, numbers, or design elements display distinct secondary images rather than simple machine vibration. The doubling may appear strongest on the date, inscriptions, or other raised features, creating crisp separation that cannot be explained by circulation wear. Unlike random damage or weak strikes, authentic double dies originate during die creation itself, making every certified example a permanent record of a unique manufacturing event. That subtle distinction separates an ordinary quarter from one capable of capturing the attention of advanced specialists. Because the doubling is often difficult to recognize without careful examination, countless opportunities have quietly slipped away. Collectors have shared stories of searching through thousands of bankrupt rolls before finally spotting one remarkable coin moments before giving up for the day. Others have remembered spending unusual-looking quarters years earlier, only realizing much later that they might have unknowingly released an important variety back into circulation. Families sorting inherited collections have occasionally discovered coins that had remained untouched for decades, revealing surprising details under magnification that no previous owner had ever noticed. Those stories continue inspiring both beginners and experienced collectors to slow down, examine every detail, and remember that extraordinary discoveries rarely announce themselves with obvious signs. As awareness of modern mint varieties has continued growing, authenticated double-die quarters have attracted increasing attention whenever they appear at major auctions or specialized private sales. Exceptional examples displaying bold, unmistakable doubling and attractive preservation have crossed the $5,000 mark, surprising those who believe only 19th-century coins command significant premiums. Collectors appreciate these pieces not simply because they are rare, but because they represent genuine mistakes created during the mint's production process. Every documented sale strengthens interest in surviving examples, especially those retaining original surfaces and outstanding visual appeal after decades in existence. The most remarkable coins occupy an entirely different level of the market. When dramatic doubling is paired with exceptional condition, outstanding strike quality, and unquestioned authenticity, values can climb dramatically through elite auctions and important private transactions. The finest modern-era coins across the hobby have reached or exceeded $120,000 when rarity, eye appeal, and collector demand aligned perfectly. Those headline prices represent extraordinary outliers rather than ordinary circulation finds, but they demonstrate how dramatically value can change when a genuinely important mint era survives in remarkable preservation. For serious collectors, discovering such a coin is not simply about financial reward. It is about preserving an irreplaceable piece of mint history. If you decide to inspect a 1981 Washington quarter, patience and careful observation are your greatest tools. Study every inscription under strong magnification, looking for true doubling with clear separation instead of blurred edges caused by mechanical movement. Examine the strike depth to determine whether the design details appear unusually sharp or unexpectedly weak. Inspect the rim for complete consistency around the entire coin, and compare the metal tone under natural light to ensure the surfaces remain original and free from harsh cleaning or artificial alteration. Most importantly, resist the temptation to rush toward a sale simply because something appears unusual. Professional authentication by a respected grading service remains the most reliable way to determine whether a coin represents a genuine double-die variety or an ordinary piece affected by circulation or post-mint damage. The United States Washington quarter of 1981 reminds us that the greatest discoveries often begin with the smallest details. A faint line beside a letter, an unexpected second image in the date, or an unusual feature overlooked for decades can transform an everyday coin into a remarkable chapter of American numismatic history. Every pocketful of change still carries the possibility of revealing a hidden story, waiting for someone curious enough to notice what everyone else missed. If you enjoy uncovering these forgotten treasures and learning the remarkable histories hidden inside ordinary coins, be sure to subscribe and join us for future discoveries, because the next remarkable coin we explore could be the one that's already waiting in your own collection.